Well, I'm going to start us. Others will join. There are 30 some people signed up, so I think at least 10 more will join. Yeah, I think probably when you do these things, people do sign up, so they'll just get they'll get the notes, and that helps as well. So, but again, Mary Hunt at Water, delighted to uh, be with you on May 13th, a Wednesday at 1 o'clock. This is the first of two meetings we're going to have today, one at 1 o'clock and one at 7 o'clock. These are East Coast times in the US, in order to accommodate the wide range of people who are part of our conversation. And obviously, this doesn't catch most of us, but it brings some people into conversation who wouldn't be in conversation otherwise. And that's the whole point. I'm here with Diane New at the Water Office. And Wed Naji, as she has just said, is in Germany um, doing her studies, which I think she's probably doing with her pinky because um, this is one extremely brilliant young woman who I'm sure is not sweating the university courses, and especially after her year at Water and her extraordinarily fluent English. I mean, it's wonderful to see these young women move into their professional and personal primes. And Wed, always great to have you, and thanks for helping out. Um, we at Water host the Feminist Liberation Theologians Network, and we meet today for what we call our mid-year gathering. We are grateful to Wed and to all of you to be with us, and I'm just going to start with a land acknowledgement so we can um, settle ourselves and know why we do what we do. We at Water have incorporated land acknowledgements into our programs to remind ourselves of why we do our work. Indigenous and other people of color face systemic injustice in this country. A land acknowledgement is a beginning, not an end. We at Water are in Silver Spring, Maryland, on the traditional and contemporary land of the Piscataway and Anacostan peoples. We acknowledge the trauma and injustice toward Indigenous people that is deep in U.S. culture and in our history. And we join our efforts to eradicate it and to make reparations for the genocide involved. I invite you just for a minute as we get ourselves settled to consider the Native people on whose land you sit. Feel free to list them in the chat if you'd like to honor them. There's always a way to bring more and more interest to this problem around the world of imperialism. Thank you for joining the conversation today. Our topic is Wars Solve Nothing. Feminists Create Peace. Wars Solve Nothing. Feminists Create Peace. The Feminist Liberation Theologians Network began in 1995 when Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza and I gathered a group of colleagues to discuss Catholic women's issues. In 1997, 2 years later, we opened the doors as widely as possible, which started a tradition of getting together each year since then at the annual meetings of the American Academy of Religion and the Society of Biblical Literature. We will meet next year or this year, really, the next season, but this year at the AAR SBL in Denver on Friday, November 20th from 4 to 6. And all our we've discovered that, of course, everybody doesn't go to those meetings, but 4 to 6 Mountain Time. It'll be an in-person meeting, and this meeting is meant to augment that meeting in the sense that there's a flow back and forth in terms of the issues and the people and the concerns that we share. So the mid-year meeting today is envisioned as a conversation, since not all of us can get to the in-person meetings. It's also a time to think about useful things to do. What are useful things we can do to deal with the moment in which we find ourselves? But the goal is to hear from and talk with one another, to hear what people are doing in various places as at least three wars rage: Israel, Gaza, Russia, Ukraine, US, Israel, and Iran. This is an extraordinarily dangerous moment in world history. I shudder. I don't know about you, but I shudder at the possibilities ahead of us in this moment. People who share our commitments are not, however, sitting on our hands. Feminist liberation theologians are doing. And more needs to be done. And we need to talk together so we can get ideas and inspiration and solidarity to do more. How can our being connected lead to more energy and solidarity? That's really always the question I ask. How can the fact that we're connected, we can all do what we do, but how does the fact that we're connected lead to more energy and solidarity, more sharing of resources? So, with respect to everybody's schedule, we will finish at the top of the hour. This is a 1 hour max meeting. I believe in short meetings. I actually believe in no meetings, but if I have to have meetings, I like them short. And 1 hour is plenty on Zoom, and you can do so much in an hour that you can't even imagine. An hour with good people is just much of a multiplication factor, and we will be I think moving in not an arithmetic but a geometric way today, hearing from from people and what they're doing. So we'll respect your schedules. We'll stop at the top of the hour, and if you want, there'll be time with the Zoom after that to continue conversation. But the meeting will end, I promise, at the top of the hour. This session is being recorded. Um, we are recording this, and if you want to opt out of the video, please feel free. If you feel any sense of danger being in a meeting where people will talk very directly about hard issues in the current political situation and you worry about your well-being, please feel free to opt out. Just maybe turn off your screen or um, in other ways, make sure that your identity, if you don't want it out there, does not put you in danger. So please feel free. Others, like those of us at Water, are happy to make our positions clear. For your information, Water has signed many letters and petitions with other NGOs pledging solidarity, criticizing war. Of course, we run the risk of being an easy target, especially in an environment where NGOs, and especially in the U.S., are being put upon. But the risk is something that each person and each organization must assess and act on. And so we are happily taking on the risk of that kind of work. We do it every day. We don't even think about it. But I do realize that it is not a risk that is shared equally around the world. These days call for courage. And I think just gatherings like this give me at least more courage. I have seen immigrants being led from this building where we work in shackles. There is, I think, as I have mentioned to people before, there is in this building, connected to this building, contiguous with this building, sharing a door to the lobby of this building, an organization that works as a contractor for ICE in the U.S. And what that means is that when people come and are in a legal process, they have to report to an agency to an organization like this in this building every 2 weeks or every month or whatever it is. They wear the ankle bracelets. And so ICE knows exactly who they are and where they are, and they are required to come in for a check-in. This is in our building. And they come. And when they get here, some of them go out the front door and go home, and others go out the back door in shackles and they go into captivity, as it were. And we have seen this here at Water, so we are not talking out of our hats, but I can tell you we're also not just looking out the window either. That's why we do what we do. There's also, we happen to know a group of all women, as far as I can see, from Georgetown University Law School, who have set up a program to accompany these people, everybody who goes to one of these appointments with immigration officials, by these contractors who are paid by the day for the ankle bracelet people. Everybody who has an ankle bracelet is charged. The government is charged by the day for their use of that technology. And the people in the office, the building next to us, monitor that and get paid by ICE. And then they can help out in just a moment when someone comes who has overstayed their welcome or who they think should be in another process. So we see this right here. This is not something that is foreign to us, but we can't just look out the window. We do this work. So with that, I'm going to invite us to move into small groups right now and to reconvene in 15 or 18 minutes with and introduce yourself to people, to talk to each other. And then we'll come back, and Jane Redmont and Susan Thistlethwaite will talk about some things they're doing. Jane's just back, jet lagged as she is, poor dear, from a month in France, where she has been observing the situation there. and in addition to having a good time. And Susan is on the West Coast of the U.S. in California, where she has her popular Substack and also is cooking up the possibility of a course online. So we're going to hear both from both of them just as examples, but I want everybody to talk to people first, not start with talks, but talk to people first, just as if we were together in one of those big rooms and we could introduce ourselves to each other. So, Wed, if you'll be so kind as to put us into breakout rooms, we'll be back in the plenary in about 15 minutes. But what I want you to do while you're there is to introduce yourself, say what you're doing, talk about how you're feeling about this, and then what does it mean in concrete terms to you to say that wars solve nothing and feminists create peace? Do those two things even go together for you? What does this mean? And what do we in feminist liberation theology circles bring to the table that nobody else brings? And if we don't bring it, it's not going to be there. So I just would encourage you to have that conversation now with each other. I can see people here from a number of countries. I think Canada, Italy, Germany, Ireland. I'm sure I'm missing someone, but and there may be more joining us. So let's do that. Is that okay for everybody? Chat with each other. And then we will, oh, Ireland. Yes, I said Ireland, but I see now Dr. Condren has joined us as well as Sheila Curran. So well represented. Yes, let's do that. And then we will reconvene and open our conversation with a quick word from Susan and a quick word from Jane and continue with some, practically speaking, what gives here? Okay, Wed, take it away. Thank you very much. How were your conversations? Yeah, yeah. Good. That's why we get together, friends. This is the reason. And I want to thank all of you for being part of this. I want to thank Wed for making sure that our rooms worked smoothly. And I'd like to move on to ask my longtime friend and an FLTN stalwart, Jane Redmont. We were classmates together at Harvard, I think in preschool, weren't we? Jane, to spice up the plenary conversation a little bit. Jane is an active writer and administrator. She was professor at Guilford College. She lives in Boston. She does retreat work and other kinds of things. And she's just been an American in Paris for the last month with family and friends. And Jane grew up, a lot of her youth was spent in Paris and at least in larger France, if not all in Paris. So she visits with ease and insight. And she just returned yesterday, so she may be a bit jet lagged, but I'm just going to give her a couple of minutes to help us hear a few things that she saw and heard, experiences that those of us who live in the U.S. don't get here, but that are interesting as reflected through the eyes of someone who does live here, because we are in a very difficult moment. We are rightfully accused and demeaned in the world for over what's going on. But I think, Jane, you'll have a perspective for us, and I welcome you to share that. And I welcome those who have joined us since we started at the top of the hour. So go ahead, Jane, just for a few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you for inviting me. A few caveats. Yes, I am jet lagged, although I did get a good night's sleep. And I couldn't connect through my computer, so I'm on the phone, so I cannot see you all for the most part. Other caveats, I'm going to share a few observations rather than diagnosis or recommendations of practices because of the nature of my visit. I did not meet with intentional communities of social change. I observed, had conversations, had a lot of time to think. But it was a change of context. I made the visit intentionally a kind of retreat because of my writing and research. I also want to say that in the fall meeting, I talked about the importance of media and communication. I'm more and more convinced of the importance of amplifying voices that we don't hear and connecting. Having said that, I want to draw attention to four things related to visit: location, context, interconnectedness, and practice. These are not specifically French things, but when you change locations, where you sit or stand changes your perspective. A few things with being in France have to do for me with being back in a country where history is absolutely everywhere. on the street corners, in the street signs, in the perspective people have. And it does a few things. One is it's not just 3 or 4 centuries of history. So the long view is very long. It also makes some people much more cynical than Americans. I don't mean this necessarily in a negative sense, but there is often a sense in France of, oh, we've seen this before. Another thing is that France is very much, and this is a change for me. I was born in the early 1950s, grew up in France in the 50s and 60s, then went to college in the U.S. during the Vietnam War and so on. France is now in the context of the European community, always. So you've always got the history of France, and you've always got what's going on in the European community. And I will be really interested in hearing from our European participants' perspective. France is thinking, official France is thinking about things like defense, quote unquote, and aggression in a European context, but also thinking about realities like the environment and energy, which are very connected to war. Yes, the gas prices, which were already high in France, have gone up already. A sign of hope that I see is this context of the European community. I grew up basically in post-World War II France. It was a different world. So there's a much stronger awareness of Europe, and as we've all seen in the news, the configurations of power and alliance and analysis to some extent have been shifting. Context. I said a little bit about context, so just now, so I'm going to skip over that, except to say that context is crucial, and that concern for our broader planetary context is much more embedded, again, observation, anecdotal, into French society in daily practices than in ours. There are practices of bicycling and recycling, and that now are mainstream. Whole lot more bike lanes in Paris than I was there in the fall. That was very striking to me. Interconnectedness. This is a media observation. The French are both well-informed and not well-informed about the U.S. French people I talk to who are friends who are generally from the educated class, although with all kinds of folks as well, and farmers markets and so forth, which I did frequent, are very concerned about our own situation of evolving tyranny. They also have questions about it. I have had to mention racism a lot because French folks do not always understand the role that racism has played in the rise of not just the leaders of the current administration, but the supporters. I also found that French people are more informed than Americans about geopolitics in general, but there are things they don't know about our politics. I found zip awareness and had to explain to 2 very well-educated people what Citizens United was. That in 2010, our electoral situation, because of that Supreme Court decision, changed in rather drastic ways, which are having an influence on money, on elections, and I've had to explain to folks that it's not only, oh, what are the Democrats doing, which all my French friends want to know, what are y'all doing? But are we going to have a free and fair election? That's not a worry in France. On the positive side, we have, and I'll get to practices shortly, we have a tradition in the U.S. of deep involvement of, and Tocqueville saw this very well, of voluntary associations. That does not exist in the same way in France. There are voluntary associations, but in France, people demonstrate all the time. That's a primary mode, though not the only, of making change. We demonstrate, but we also lobby and put a great deal of emphasis on elections, for better or for worse. That's less so in France. Are French people concerned about the rise of the right in France? Yes. Is there a rise in anti-Semitism? Yes, very troubling, as there is in this country. Is there concern about Gaza? Yes. Is there concern about racism in France? Yes. The ways of responding to it are different. And just as ways of making change or manifesting opinion are very present through demonstrations on the streets, they are also very present in France's intellectual tradition. There's always intellect and an argument and discussion. The US also has a deep tradition of nonviolent resistance that really is a tradition and that intersects with feminist traditions. I just want to say a little about my own involvements, and then I'll.
Yeah, you'll need to grab Jane because we've got other people to hear from.
Yep.
We're moving along. Thanks.
The brief thing is my life has changed from a lot of committees and a lot of public activism to a more quiet one, but I believe everything is connected. And I always suggest that people pick up one thread, because the one thread and the local issue will lead you to everything else, because it's impossible for it not to. So my piece is continuing to, I'm going to offer again my retreat on spiritual practices for troubled times, and continue with spiritual direction and retreats for people who are either involved in the struggle and need the support, or people who are just feeling paralyzed and down. And finally, feminist rule: all spiritual practices are bodily practices. I think I'll stop there.
Thanks, Jane. I appreciate your perspective and also the ongoing work that you do, and the reminder to the rest of us that all the work that's important is not loud and glitzy and out there for the masses, but so much of it is also in the way that you describe quiet work, and I appreciate that so very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn to Susan Thistlethwaite, who has a Substack that I read religiously, as it were. It's called No Fear, Religion, and Politics, and it is just that. Susan is president and professor emerita, as you know, of Chicago Theological Union, now what I call super actively retired in California. So, Susan, if you could tell us a little bit about your work, and particularly about a course that I know you're planning and the urgency that you feel about the moment, it will be a great opportunity for people to put on their reading list your Substack. Unmute, please, Susan.
Okay.
There you go. Fine. Go right ahead. Thank you. And let's be brief because I notice our hour running and we want to hear from lots of people if they have other things to add.
I want to say this, first thing, take it away with you. It's important. The oldest war in the world is the war on women. I wrote a book called Women's Bodies as Battlefield, which compares shooting wars to the war on women's bodies. And that's our insight into what is happening now. And it surprises no one that the Epstein followers and the pedophiles and so forth would be making a war that is absolutely useless, except it sells arms. I have written for the public almost all my career, and I wrote for the Washington Post for 10 years. I wrote a column on religion and politics. And when Bezos took over the Washington Post, he canceled that whole section. I was not the only one who wrote for that. And he not only did that, he wiped our columns from the servers. I mean, I have copies, but he is a genuine schmuck. But I decided to write this Substack because I could control it. You know, it's my content. No editor is going to say to me, well, you can't say that. And it has grown tremendously. And it's, as Mary said, it's no fear, religion and politics. We have to say what needs to be said. and it it has engrossed me tremendously. But I have taught for so long. And I really thought that resourcing people in the movement with liberation theology could be a contribution, right? Each of us, we are making contributions, right? Whatever we have, we're trying to put it into the struggle. And so I have promised this course called Liberation Theologies. It launches in September of 2026. I am using a online teaching platform. For those of you who don't know the United Church of Christ, we are organized into conferences, and the largest conference of the United Church of Christ will host the course. I am busily recording people, interviewing them, or having them give lectures and recordings. There will also be live Zoom chats. But my lecturers are global, and this is a global struggle. And, as we know, feminism is global. So I have, and if Betty asked me how to find out about it, I will be announcing it periodically on the Substack. It's a little too soon right now, but I'm trying to learn how to record myself. All my previous online teaching, I had staff to do that. And so now I took advice from a friend of Mary's and mine, Kwok Pui-Lan, post-colonial theologian, and very, very good at this electronic stuff. And I took her advice. I'm using the Riverside platform. I got something really good as a test, and then it turned purple, and I don't know why. So I'm having to practice before I feel the quality is good enough to start posting it on the website. But it's, a fair amount of time till September. But you don't learn liberation theology in a classroom. And this is the last thing I'm going to say. You learn it in the street. You learn it in the struggle. I mean, I taught liberation theology in seminary, but I did not learn it until I did a Bible study for battered women. And they taught me how to read the Bible. They taught me about the struggle. And people think you can just learn liberation theology. You can't. You have to live it. And that is the most important thing that I'm going to try to convey. And people who take this class are going to be in the struggle, right? But we use the tools of social analysis, sociology, economics, psychology to examine the struggle that we're in order to engage it more effectively, and use the tools of religion to strengthen our movement. Because, how, the history of Christianity is one long series of thefts of the insights of Jesus, the disciples, the people who came along after them, who actually tried to live the gospel. And it's an engagement. So I'm excited about that. I feel that it's a contribution I can make. And
well, you are, Susan. It is a contribution you can make, and you're making it. And I want to tell you that I read each one with great interest and gratitude. You also mentioned our dear Kwok Pui-Lan, who'll be on the session tonight. If you are not aware of her Substack, it's called Kwok and Roll. Wouldn't it be called Kwok and Roll? She's a brilliant post-colonial scholar, as many of you know, and a good friend of many of us. And she reads you too, Susan, with great.
Yeah, and I read her.
Yeah, it's all doing. We have to, and I mentioned in my own group that 9 out of the 10 people being taken away in shackles are men. which means that 9 out of 10 of the families left behind are women led with children.
Oh, God.
What you say about women and the war on women is being played out
Right
everywhere. And that's
there.
just a really important example of it. I just want to mention two things that we're engaged in here at Water. We continue with our programs because we think they're important. And last month we had a wonderful program with Orthodox Christian women, Greek Orthodox Christian women, and Ashley Pupura's book on Orthodox feminist theology is really something new under the sun. So get a look at that. Look on our website, watch that. That is something new under the sun. We also had Meg Stapleton Smith, who brought the Mary Daly lost manuscript to light, Catholicism and Her Beginning. Something new under the sun. Imagine like finding a Shakespeare play to find a Mary Daly truncated manuscript, and now published with 5 essays by so-called Daily scholars. And again, it's called Catholicism and Her Beginning. So we're trying to do our thing that way, which we've always done. And I'm working with Kwak Puilan on what we call Faithful Provocations, which is a new podcast series. The 4th one will be out Friday. I hope you've seen it. If you haven't, enjoy it. I'm not sure what we're going to do after that, but the interesting thing there is, and we need to have a conversation about this, is the impact of AI on all of this. Because Puilan has really taken on the learning about AI. Not only is she brilliant at doing the technology, but she teaches herself, and she's really working with AI in a very critical way, but also using it for everything it's worth. And we have discussed their Christian nationalism, women of peace, and so on and so forth, and there'll be more. So I would like to say that these are the kinds of things that we need to all be doing. New things, not just everything we've been doing, but I would challenge us to add something new. So the question on the table is, what more can we do? What is the more we can do in our own situations, and how can we make more use of this network? So the floor is open. I'm going to leave it open until the top of the hour, at which point I'm going to close it very quickly and then reopen it for those who want to stay on for a few more minutes to chat. So let's hear from some people. What did you hear in your group, or what are you thinking now might be a useful thing? Obviously, our Google list idea has not panned out. People are not putting stuff there that we had hoped. We decided not to do a common statement because no one speaks for all of us. But what is it that we can do? Again, to remind you, the meeting in Denver will be an opportunity to talk about that more. But what more can we be doing in these urgent, and I mean emergency times around the world? So, floor's open. Let's hear from everybody, as many as we can. Just brief snippets. You can use the raise hand button at the bottom, which is under the react symbol. Just raise your hand, and that'll take you to the top of the queue, and then lower your hand when you're done. So please go ahead. You can also wave your hand if you're more comfortable doing that. Yes, let's go ahead. Ulrike, Germany, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think we should know more about each other's work, and also so that we could support each other. So maybe we can find a way. So there are so many of you who have had a long history of struggle within the Feminist Liberation Theology Network, but also within the Women's Caucus. So I'm also still supporting and work with the Women's Caucus at AAR, and they try to close us. So that's another story where we write letters, but where we can also maybe have a list of people we can either via Water or via Feminist Liberation Theology or via Women's Caucus know where people are and what they do, and then we could maybe also support that. I think we could write a letter to the Pope because we have this new Pope now, and I'm not Catholic, so I can't really dare, but I'm an ordained minister, so we could maybe do something together there and try to be received by this new Pope, and as an international organization, maybe that's also an idea. I think we can hope is in Europe that now we had elections in Hungary. Maybe you have followed that. And now they have the new prime minister. He's also a populist, but he's a European populist. So I think the politics are shifting, and we can in Europe, and we can have more sort of shared statements against the US conservative politics, but also against or for Ukrainian politics within Europe. So we have more chances now to maybe move something there.
Good.
And
yeah. Did you have one more?
maybe one last thing is I also work with AI, but I also work I have worked together with NASA in the past, but now sort of astrobiology and religion and gender. So there are also maybe new pathways of how to get into that and also use that as tools.
Fine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll make a list of these things so you'll have them. We'll also, Jane Redmond, in response to your chat, we will make that your information available to people as well, especially for your retreat, and Susan for your course. Use this network to amplify, as it were, this kind of information. Please use it. That's what it's here for. Who's next? Yes, Sheila Curran from Dublin.
I think one of the key important things is truth-telling. And I think information of truthful things that happen are one of the things that water do, but it also, one of the things in an interfaith environment where I work is the whole anti-Semitic rhetoric and the division around the war in Israel-Palestine, and how within Europe, because the guilt within the European Union to what happened during the Holocaust, and how once anybody speaks politically against what is happening, because we're stuck in Ireland with trying to be vocal in one way against what is the dissemination of or destruction of complete race of peoples, and in terms of the Middle East in general, but how truth-telling about what is happening on the ground is really, really. I think the other very important thing is, because I'm a believer like Susan, that women, both women are used as battlefields for war, and women are not getting supported and their voices being raised against war. So any place, you know, that where women have their voices have been silenced, also that the fact that coming together in the everyday that they do to prevent and keep normality going in very distressful situations is something that also has to be united, that we have to lend our support, raising their voices, giving them the courage, and also the courage to keep speaking out for the everyday effects of war and against where the resources of countries are put into arms trades, etc., and foolish wars across the world to the detriment. And the other thing is the link between environmental degradation and war, because the war at the moment are around our resources, our natural resources, and the colonization of those. So that's the link that we constantly have to make, that everything is integrated. And I think we do that as women, and I think it's just important to highlight that in the different contexts that we can find ourselves.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Absolutely, and we'll again we'll make those comments available. Beth Blissman was with us earlier this hour. She is the United Nations NGO person for Loreto, the Loreto community, and she was talking in the small group in a similar vein. She's going to try to join us again tonight for those who come to the other session, to talk about efforts at the UN that women are engaged in, and including many women in religion, especially the nuns, pushing especially on the question of nuclear weapons. She quoted Mary Jelinek, who's one of our people, who is the Pax Christi main rep at the UN. So women are not simply in their local communities, which is terribly important, but also at the UN pushing. And she was hopeful, which was fun. I'm going to hear more from her tonight, wasn't she, Becky? She was very hopeful about things. So with that, I'm just going to take a quick minute to say we're at the top of the hour, and those who would like to be excused, please feel free to do so. We remind you that we'll be meeting again in Denver on Friday, November 20th, 2026 at the American Academy of Religion meeting. I remind you that FLTN is a project of water, and all of our programs are free and open to everybody. We love your donations, but we don't ask for them, in the sense that we have taken the position that if we share among us, there's enough. That's been the water mantra for 42 years. If we share together, there's enough. And because of the generous time, talent, and money sharing of people, water programs are done like this with no charge and no worry about that on your part as a participant. But of course, you're doing this. With that, I reopen the conversation, but those who have to leave, we understand, and you may leave gracefully with gratitude. So continue the conversation. Who will be next? Let's see. Let me see a hand up or a wave.
I don't know how to do that hand up, but I'll talk anyway.
Well, you'll talk anyway. Great. And Jane Redmond thanked those from Europe, since she was not by any means or intended to or expected to be speaking from a European perspective, but simply from that expat perspective that really helps to see things another way as well. Mary Condren.
Yeah, I want to talk about something that when we talk about, war against women, the biggest war, as theologians, the biggest war in a religious context is the war of sacrifice. And the institutions of sacrifice, the language of sacrifice, has been instrumental in excluding women from most of the major traditions, from any kind of officiation, any kind of responsibility, and any kind of authority. And it has passed from the churches and the Reformations, and the Reformations were really not about sacrifice. They were really about who could perform the biggest sacrifice, and who was allowed to do it. And that language has moved imperceptibly into the language of war. I've studied this for many, many years. I could go on at great length about how the main warriors use the language of sacrifice in order to legitimate their efforts. And I think as one of the things I'm impressed by Pope Leo, and I'm not easily impressed by anybody, especially popes, but I'm impressed by his emphasis on compassion and mercy. And I think unless we, radically critique the language of sacrifice and how it's used in the traditions, in the denominations, and the one thing that they all agree on is the Muslims, they have their own version of sacrifice. It was the grandson of Muhammad who got killed, and they have to recommend or commemorate him every single year. And it's all part of a major mystification. It's a mystification that keeps the men in power. And, I've done a bit of work on it, but anyway, I won't say what I was going to say. I think as theologians, though, that is a major contribution that we could make, that every time we see it popping its head up, that we try to critique what it means, who's using it, what are they getting out of it, who's benefiting, basic questions about power and how it is being used by the sacrificial agencies in our society. And as I said, it has passed imperceptibly from religion straight into the warrior camps, with no distinction, except that they can, even Trump can say, we can sacrifice this, we can sacrifice. He's they're not even waiting for permission from the Pope to be priests, but they will take it upon themselves to sacrifice the world, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, as Hexit would say. The language that they're coming out with at the moment is blasphemous in the extreme. And I think, regardless of the many issues that we could be focusing on, I think our main contribution has to be the ongoing and radical critique of that discourse.
Well, Mary, I wish you could come over this weekend, because there's going to be on the National Mall in Washington, Rededicate 250. As part of the 250th anniversary of this fair country, Trump's National Day of Prayer. And it will supposedly pull a lot of people onto the National Mall for a 9-hour prayer service and revival. scheduled now to include speakers Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth. Although they're in Beijing today, so I don't know how they're going to get back and be coherent for it. But anyway, I don't expect them to be coherent. This will be prayer, worship, testimony, speech, song, and storytelling. And this will be, keep an eye out for it, because this will be the language and the imagery that has been instrumentalized in terms of white Christian nationalism to lay the Christian foundation for this country's 250th anniversary of conquest. So I recommend this to you to keep your eyes on it. It is it's said that it will be an interfaith lineup, but the event's faith leaders, I can quote you from a recent article, noted that 14 of the 15 participating faith leaders are Christian.
Many of them are men.
No, of course not.
Are men? Are they all men?
I don't have that information, but I will.
Okay, but
So all I'm saying is you're absolutely right. And if you want to watch it play out in front of your eyes, it will be this Saturday on the Washington National Mall.
I see it being played out all along. And somebody said we've got to do whatever we can. And for my very big amount of sins that I've committed in my life, I have volunteered to review J.D. Vance's book when it comes out for the Irish Times. I need doing it this like a hole in the head, but I thought I cannot shut up. At least I can do something to critique. I actually did my thesis on René Girard, and apparently he's converted to Catholicism because of the work of Girard. So, I said, I can't shut up anymore. I have to do something. So Bridget has to wait for a week or so once the book comes out.
Yeah,
Mary, just before this call, I was writing on that event on the National Mall. And I'm starting out with Isaiah 58. I despise your solemn assemblies. So I think they are irritating God with this. But the other thing is Carter Hayward's book on white Christian nationalism. And Carter and Isaiah go together on this. And if you don't know that book, by Carter on white Christian nationalism, the 7 deadly sins of white Christian nationalism, be sure to take a look at it.
Yeah, we can include it in the notes, which leads me to say any of these ideas or comments or suggestions that we can socialize in this group, and it will, I guarantee you it will be multiplied many times if we send that information out. So we'll include Carter's book as well. Anybody else before we I never like to hold people longer than we plan, and that was the meeting.
Just a quick note. So I was waiting so much to that we had the chance to see each other again now, half time through the year, and that I had also some other struggles. That's why I couldn't do some work at the beginning of the year. But then I felt a lot. It would have been really helpful if we would have met like even quicker. Maybe in these difficult times, maybe we can, we could also go to water, of course, but that's different. So if you really meet with these people where we know them and trust them, and also water is not meeting so Women's Caucus is not meeting so regularly now because there are some changes, and so it would really be supportive if we would know there is already another meeting like every quarter of a year or so.
Yeah. That's a very good idea. Obviously, no one has to come, but these are the kinds of things. I mean, just to hear what we've heard today from folks who've spoken, and more that I know other people who haven't spoken would have to say, has been rich and reason to do it. So, thank you, Ulrika. You're right. Anybody else? If Alexina Murphy, I'm always happy to see you. Alexina was long in London and now in Canada, and one of our longtime friends and colleagues, and engaged in many instances of bad trouble, or good trouble. I guess in your case, good trouble. Yeah. So Diane New?
Yes, just to say, I've noted on the screen we had people from England, India, Canada, Germany, Ireland, Italy, and USA today.
Oh,
Pretty amazing for 22 people to be
Yeah, and
from
I have the list for tonight,
7
which
countries.
includes Philippines, Australia, etc. Just as a quick look. So
Yeah.
there will be the usual kind of diversity, and but the way Veronica Dunn, go ahead. Let's hear from you from Western Canada.
Yes, well, I just wanted to say I have no specific suggestions to make apart from what has been said, but I wanted to say that I appreciate Susan's uh, Substack, and I have really been enjoying the podcast that you and Kwok Pui have been presenting, Mary. And I think that's a good example for me of something new that can, put it out into the.
Mhm.
I'd also like to say that I think what we also touched on is that whole thing of relationship. And that's one of the things that I've been learning from First Nations people is that in the First Nations community, the most important thing is relationships. And it's out of those relationships, I think, that the energy comes that we can see something new and do something new. So I wanted to say that too. That's the part that I struggle with. It's easier the relationship part thing really is to keep believing in how important that is when there's so much else to do is challenging.
Thank you. Yes, well said, and said in a timely way. I think that's right. So, yeah, well, Diane and I are going to Detroit next week for the 50th anniversary of the Women's Ordination Conference in Catholicism. If you want to
great.
have an experience, if you want to have an experience of having made absolutely no progress over 50 years, you'll want to be at that meeting. But the point I'm going to make there is that so much has happened through the non-ordination of women that has changed the world, that we should be delighted that we have been spared that foray into sacrifice, Mary Condren, and really begin to see how things can be different, materially different in religion as well as in other places. And that's not making a virtue of necessity. That's really observing the kinds of ministries people have been doing. And in a certain way, water would be a good example of that. I mean, we've been at this not for fame or fortune but really because it's important work. And what you do, Veronica, and other women in your missionary community, as it were, you people are very much doing that. So anyway, just to lift those things up and not to let the people who are so recalcitrant, who, as I said in one of my recent pieces, the bishops should hang their heads in shame until their miters fall off, which is like an Irish curse, until their miters fall off, because of the shame of that. So it's all of a piece. I just want to say it's all of a piece. And Ulrike, you make a good point when you remind us of that. So thank you. I'm going to close us out here, and yes, Betty, did you want to speak, or were you just saying bye-bye?
Goodbye. Thanks.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Maureen, good to see you too. Really good to see everybody. Take care.